Hi, I'm CJ and this is my RC channel. Okay, I am starting the assembly proper. There are a couple of doublers that could be put in right away, one of which definitely needs to be put in right away. This would be the first thing I would glue in place, and make sure that you build 2 mirror copies so that when it is basically not folded, but flipped over on top of the formers, which you're going to assemble on one of them from here forward. When you turn that over, you've got the doublers on the right side. There are these 2 doublers which go on the opposite side from these. Those you want to wait until that part of the fuselage is together, so that you can work on the rest of those side pieces. If you did this early, the surface wouldn't be even, or you'd have to put down thin pieces of ply to compensate for these. So it's best to leave these off till later. This is the other doubler that can be put on early because of the hole and the square cutout here, or rectangular cutout. It can be aligned nicely with the forward and top edge of the balsa. Okay, but this might be better left until pieces are together as well. I'm probably going to go ahead and just glue these on early. Just be very careful of positioning. You want to make sure that it's flush with the top edge, with the forward edge, and that these holes are lining up. So make sure that you have the right piece, because there's a left and a right. Let's see. These are the other 2 pieces that are kind of like doublers. They are going to go on the fuselage like here. This hole is going to line up to this hole, but these balsa pieces here are going to be in there as well. So I would wait until the formers are in, and then do this and these at that time. That would be when both sides are together. I think that'll make it easier to do those and make sure they're aligned properly, because if they're not aligned properly, there's going to be issues. A lot of this is about sequence with this model, and I've spent a lot of time looking at all the different pieces, thinking of different combinations, and figuring out which way to do this best. So if you're building one of these, and you're not experienced, follow my steps and you'll probably have a good outcome. I use a variety of adhesives in addition to epoxy of various time limits for drying. Sometimes I use standard wood type glues, but primarily I use various CAs. For the doublers, I'm using Slow Zap, mainly because I want to have the time to make sure that these doublers are in the correct position before it sets, and I highly recommend that. You don't want to have one of these off angle or something like that, and the glue sets on you and you're screwed. It's better to use Slow Zap, and then if you're really in a hurry, you can hit it with some Jet Set for for these side pieces here. For the fuselage formers, when I do these, I'm going to be using a gap filling CA, and then for most other things I use just standard thin CA, and where reasonable I use Jet Set, but I generally don't like using accelerator. The main time I use accelerators is when I'm using gap fill and I'm trying to make a fillet. Otherwise, I'd rather have a nice clean bond and let the glue, take the time to set up on its own without hitting it with accelerant. It's just me. There's no real reason behind that. It's just how I've done it for years. So I'm going to glue this last doubler on with Slow Zap, and then I'm going to go ahead and start putting in the formers. Well, I've changed my mind about using the gap fill at least immediately. I'm going to start by using thin just to get this stuff tacked into place. because of the way these pieces join, you don't want to glue these two formers without having this connecting piece in between them, because it has cutouts that join in. So this should be the first pair of formers you do. And I know this looks like it's out of line here, but that's just the very thin plywood warping, or having a little bit of warp in it from the manufacturer. What you're interested in is getting a good joint on this vertical line, and then these two lines here where these pieces join to the fuselage. I will probably use gap fill later to make some fillets, but I want to start just by getting stuff tacked in place, and the thin CA is perfect for that. So I can go back and do extra gluing later, and you want to be careful about putting too much glue at this point. I wouldn't use anything like a wood glue, because, for example, you have 4 holes here, 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? Only 2 of those are being filled by this piece here. The other 2 holes are for pieces that are going to be coming onto the fuselage from this side to create shape. That's pieces like these thin pieces here are the types of that are going to be going along the outside of those fuselage sides, and then having some balsa pieces wrapped over them. So if you use something that's too thick a glue, like let's say you use something like a wood glue, just standard yellow wood glue, it might get into these holes and fill them slightly, partially, and make it hard for you to get those cutouts to lock in and join in. So if you did want to use that type of glue, I would use it very, very sparingly, and I would try to keep it away from the holes that are not being filled by this piece here. So another reason to not use the gap fill at this time. Gap fill probably wouldn't block off those holes, but a wood glue certainly could pool into those and fill them while this is drying. So I would stay away from that. After putting in these 2 formers, I put in the former at the rear of the cockpit, and then positioned the battery tray. Once those 4 pieces were in place, along with the upper piece back here, which I talked about a minute ago, being 5, I am putting the second fuselage side on now. I'm just going to tack it in place from this side here at these points where the formers pass through, and I'll do a more thorough job of gluing and filleting after that. The next piece is probably going to be putting on the piece that goes down here. Following this piece will need to go in. In fact, since I haven't glued this down, I'm probably going to go ahead and put that in place here now. And this piece, excuse me for bumping the camera, is going to go in here. And as you can see, these are better done now than once everything is glued, once this upper half is glued in place. Now I'm going to need to weight this down a teeny bit. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to use yet, but I'll figure that out in a moment. Go. Those little suckers are finicky as hell, aren't they? I think I may have to wait on these 2 pieces until I get these anchored. I was hoping I could get that all in one shot, but I think that there's going to be enough flexibility even once this is glued to be able to get those 2 pieces in place. That's, again, this one, F26 and F33, that go in front of the leading edge and rear of the trailing edge. This is an important piece because of that cutout. That's going to be the that's going to be where the front anchor for the bottom wing is. Let's see. Yep, that's how that's going to go. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and anchor this piece in place, and once I've got that tacked and dry, I'll continue. Things are coming together nicely. I just tacked this in place. You may notice here that I've done some filleting. This deck right here not only is very important because it's your servo mount, it's going to be the battery tray, but it runs down the center of the model, and I have the feeling that this provides a lot of the overall structural strength for the model. So I made sure to fillet these joints here where it mounts on the back. I was, as you can see, hopefully through this photo here, or you know, in the video here, I was very liberal with gap fill, and then hit it with jet set to make a nice solid fillet. I did the same at the rear here. I will do the same on the firewall once I'm there, and I also did here and on the other side here and there. So this piece, and the firewall are going to be the major structural pieces combined with these four formers. So you really want to go a little heavy on the glue there. There's no reason to be sparing. There's no upside to the little bit of weight that the glue is going to add compared to the strength that it's going to give to the model. And you know, being a tail dragger, these models tend to, you know, land, catch some grass, and dump right onto the nose. So you definitely want to make sure that the front of the airplane is sturdy. So I'll be doing a nice heavy fillet here at where the battery tray meets the firewall. And before I do that, I'm going to put a nice line of thin CA here to wick in between those pieces of wood and join, then do the filleting. And you know, I've done a little bit of extra glue on the sides, but I'm not going to do a lot because this is just balsa. This is very thin, very delicate wood. It's not going to provide a tremendous amount of structural strength. So filleting it is not going to be worthwhile. That's where you don't want to add the extra weight. You definitely want to glue it solidly. You know, you want a good bead all the way down. So once you've tacked things in place and it's together, go ahead and take some thin CA and dribble it along the edge so that it runs down and wicks in and makes a good bond. That'll be plenty right there. And because remember, there's side pieces that are going to go on here, and those are going to add structure as well. But this inner plywood section is the real backbone of the fuselage. And this is also extremely important, not only for because it provides rigidity for these two, it's also going to be the mount for the mid wing of the three. That's what these two little holes are for here. Those are going to be the bolt anchor points, so that needs to be accounted for as well. So making sure that that is sturdy, that this is joined, these two formers are solidly joined to this and to the battery tray below, creates a nice block, and that's what you need to reinforce. So I've glued these two guys in here, and now I'm going to, after I finish doing a little more glue on the firewall, it's going to be time to put in this piece right here. And then once that's in place, then I can come in from above. It's going to be a little hard to do, but I think it's definitely better to have done it after the fact, because if I had glued those doublers like this on in advance, it would have been very hard to get this to lock in as tightly as it does. And that's, again, part of that structure that we're trying to build. You know, it's not a lot of wood here at the edges, but when joined to the balsa, that provides a lot of strength. And yeah, I really like this kit. It's very well done. All these interlinking parts, when glued and filleted, will provide a tremendous amount of strength. This should be a real a beefy little craft, and short of you know, augering it in, it should take a lot. The nose cone, on the other hand, probably won't. I might even consider making a cast of it, making a mold of it before I cut it, just so that if I trounce the plane at some point and you know, just damage up that plastic, that I can make a new one out of fiberglass. I'm hoping this is going to be a nice flying airplane for some time, so I'm going to try to do as best a job as I can on it. This is in place. The doublers that go behind it and the corner pieces here are in place, and they've been thoroughly glued. The doubler here, that goes in before you put in these corner pieces. Make sure to do that first. That's F25. When you're doing F25 and when you're doing the doubler that goes behind here, I recommend sanding a little bit of a bevel into the end, just to try to get it to fit into that corner piece there as snugly as possible. You want as much surface-to-surface contact as possible, so that your glue has a better purchase. I've filleted up in here and along certain edges. Put in the I think this is going to be where the lower wing bolts in. And now it's time to take the bottom sheet. I'm going to start by dropping it. No, first I'm going to clean up the little bit of flashing, and then I'm going to glue it in place here. Just mock this up right now. And once I have that in place, I'll start bringing it together, making sure everything is squared up, and putting in the formers one by one as I move rearward. So that covers that. This is a real tank. It's amazing once you get things glued in and have a little more structure. It feels really solid, and you know, you can't twist it at all. It's a tank. So everything's going well. Let's continue forward. I put in the doubler here, so soon I'll be putting these two pieces in, and then putting in these pieces afterwards. I'm definitely going to put these in first, and then use that bottom edge to line up these along with the hole that is going to join to there. Now you're going to see that several of these holes are covered over. It's not a problem. Those are going to have things that plug in from the opposite side. Just off the top of my head, I'm guessing this is one of the bolt-on points for the center struts for the top wing. Could be wrong, but just guessing. A large portion of this is now done. As you can see, I've got the lower fuselage surface sheeted all the way back to the end of the tail. Don't forget the asymmetry of this piece here. You want to make sure that those two holes, the high and the low, match up to the high and low sides. It's not going to matter which one is on which side. That's just going to determine, you know, which side your servo arm is, or the control arm, the horn for, say, your elevator versus your rudder is going to be. But as long as this piece matches up with these two holes, you're fine. Definitely make sure to fillet all of these joints. Make them as sturdy as you can. Any place where these ribs are matching up to where it's plywood to plywood. Definitely fillet those. Where it's balsa, just make sure you've got a decent glue joint, and that'll be fine. So now I'm going to put these two rails from here to here, and then the doublers that go beneath those. And let's see, I'll start doing the little carbon fiber rods here and the balsa sheeting there, and then it's going to be time to start doing the sides. So I'm going to go ahead and take care of this last little bit here, and then I'm going to move on to those parts. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please click like and please subscribe to my channel.